So um, for this first video, the idea behind it is to show you what the art of the possible is. And there's a group of folks up in Boulder called Wildfire Partners. So you're going to hear that referenced a lot. But the thing that I want you to really take in is that the visual of what happened around a specific property in Nederland, Colorado. They had a fire years back, and it's not that many years, but I think it's less than 10. And they were very active in doing mitigation work. I'd say they are hyperactive in doing that and working with their residents in the neighborhood. And the point that, I want you to hear are the residents and what they were talking about in terms of the mitigation work. So you hear a lot of reference to their specific neighborhood effort here, and that same thing can be present for us too. We've been doing a great job over the past 8-9 years, and prior to that, I know we had a gap between the previous chipping efforts, but if we continue going, we're headed in the right direction, long as we stay positive about what we're looking at here. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video, and you guys let me know if you can hear the sound. I forgot to enable the sound. Sorry, my apologies.
Weird sound, but it kept pausing.
Oh, I think I know the problem. Sorry.
Personally, what I had to do when the recognition, it was like, what's going on? This can't be real. And when I drove up there and then finally saw that, no, this was coming down on top of us, it was like all of a sudden, put your emotions aside and just get focused. You know what you have to do it. Work the plan. Don't think about it. But recognizing that this may be it. It is on top of us. We did not have any warning. So all we could do is react, take what we needed, and go.
Pulling down an unmitigated driveway to an unmitigated structure, and you're in the emotional toil of an advancing fire front or embers or just all of the emotional content with that. You want to do a good thing, and you pull down and they haven't done the pre-work to enable you to be successful. It's heartbreaking. And so then you make that decision that this is not a defensible space, and you know in your mind that you write it off and you move on to something more defensible.
I had done a lot of work, weeks and weeks of mitigation, all directed by Wildfire Partners. When we left, I had seconds to get out of here, and all I could do was turn it over and hope that our work would be successful. Turns out, it was even better than my highest expectations. And I think that's really because we took our time and did all the work that was necessary. We thought we were going to have to clear cut the whole property, and it turns out we didn't have to do that at all, and especially all the aspens around the property, which served to protect us, and they did protect us. They actually saved our land.
You know, the Smokey the Bear prevention idea is kind of very 50s, and we now have to think about living with fire. And Wildfire Partners helps that process. to learn how to live with fire is more important than just hoping that somebody else is going to take care of putting it out. So as the fire started, the wind shifted to its predictable pattern, came right towards the house. And because of the low fuel load around the house, the fire literally just followed the fuel around the zone 2 sections that were mitigated and never actually came to the house itself. So the result of that mitigation left enough greenery that we have a very nice landscape while the forest has been completely destroyed around the house. It's very easy to get attached to trees, and especially mature trees. So it takes a little bit of effort to think through what it's going to look like if those trees do catch fire.
Wildfire Partners, I think, to some degree, the benefit of it is self-evident if you look at the Cold Springs fire. I knew that a number of my neighbors on the road that I live on had participated in that, and then there were some homes that I didn't know had participated. And I can tell you that I hadn't participated, but being the fire chief, I thought to some degree maybe I knew as much as Wildfire Partners. And I think the benefit is that even having been in the fire business for 26 years, it is a fresh perspective on your property. That it's a different set of eyes that looks not just at your fuels and horizontal and vertical continuity and trees and shrubs and bushes, but also the building construction elements and the other pieces that they look at. Being a professional in the business, I'm going to enter Wildfire Partners. I'm going to have a second set of eyes. Come look at my property. And I think the trick is that mitigation is, always present. It's never ending. And the trick is how do you efficiently use your time? And I think Wildfire Partners will help prioritize, where you spend your efforts.
I would highly encourage everybody to do Wildfire Partners. And if you have considerations about it, keep in mind that nobody is going to make you do anything. It's all voluntary. So you'll learn all kinds of ways to protect your house that work. They work.
After the fire, looking at how things went down, I am certain that our house was savable because of the work we had done with Wildfire Partners.
If you live in the mountains, you need Wildfire Partners. So anybody who's interested in living in the mountains, call them.
It's an amazing shot, right? And notice that the house in the earlier video and the house at the end were different. So there were two houses that were completely surrounded by fire at one point, and they managed to survive. And so it's possible. And so what you're looking at is a concept called fire adaptive. And so the landscape is prepared and ready and mitigated, and the fire travels, around the areas where the vegetation is the largest. And so those areas where it's reduced, then you stand a better opportunity for having your property survive. All right, so this is what we're gonna cover here. The Deb is, I think, still working with Steve. We'll just go ahead and continue with, I have an intro part at the beginning, so we still have more time, but we'll talk about priority work areas, home ignition zone, the fire mitigation techniques, some home hardening against the ember storm, which is, I think, our biggest concern here. And then I'll show you some examples of fire mitigation efforts and leave you with some resources. Okay, so to kick off, just let everybody know I'm your neighbor. I live in Arrowwood 3. I've been here since 2010. I live on Arrowwood and the second corner with Pinewood Loop. And if you need an identification, if you drive down Arrowwood in the winter, I'm the obnoxious guy with all the Christmas lights and blow-ups in my yard and the obnoxious dogs, and I have only a sample of them here because if I had to admit how many we had, I'd have to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. So I'm not going to do that. I actually was on the board for a bit from 2013 to 2015 and served as a secretary. On the professional side, I was the Air Force Academy's emergency manager for 6 years. And I was the emergency manager during both the Waldo Canyon fire and the Black Forest fire. So gained a lot of experience during those horrible experiences here with fire. Currently, I work for the Department of Homeland Security with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in Denver. And I've been doing that since 2017. On my side gig, and this is where I can get additional experience, I'm also a member of the Tri-Lakes United Methodist Church's emergency preparedness group, and I'm the leader along with my friend Lisa Hatfield, and you may see her name in the Our Community News newspaper for Monument. And we have another gentleman, John Rickman, who's our public information officer. And we started getting involved with the efforts with wildfires initially as an outgrowth of the 2012 Waldo Canyon fire, and then follow on to that was the Black Forest fire. And we did a lot of work in helping folks clean up in the Black Forest after, and just talking to people there and hearing their stories, the residents who lost their homes. It was devastating to them. So we wanted to see what could we do to help, prevent the problems with folks losing their properties along the way. So you see our mission statement there, and we think this is a good way for us to be able to help our citizens in our community, and it's our mission. Over time, since I'd say about the last 8-9 years, we've done a lot of work on individual properties and worked with different homeowners. And as I mentioned before, we did a lot of restoration work. And then we've basically, I took the model that we use in our neighborhood, and then we started looking at how can we bring forward to help whole neighborhoods instead of single properties here. And we started doing a course called the Neighborhood Ambassador course, where we teach the neighborhoods how to organize much in the fashion that we model here in our own neighborhood, and use the concept of rolling chipping days to help them get started. And over time we do, since COVID kicked in, actually that kind of helped us because we were looking to do it all in person, and we decided to start doing it initially over Zoom. That's why I have the meeting here now. And so between February and May, we do sessions to help folks get organized. And then we get out in the summer and we start helping folks do mitigation projects in their properties. We've been connected in with the local and county folks for quite a bit. And the word got out on our programs and what we were doing, and we were awarded the 2020 National Wildfire Mitigation Award by the agencies that you see that sponsor that particular award. It was a huge award and recognition for us. We were really greatly appreciative of that, and we've used that to help get the word out to folks and become even more involved. We also do, in addition to the preparedness stuff, you'll see a few of us out at the county CERT team, and we were out on, if you were here for the July 4th Monument Parade, we're out there usually helping with lost parents, reuniting parents with kids, and keeping people safe. We also do general preparedness training, and if you're interested with that, we are part of the county's team that does the community emergency response team training. And then over at our church also, we teach CPR first aid training, and if you take that course, you'll come out very confident in how to do that work. We charge only $30 as compared to what you'll see with the Red Cross And our instructor is a professional at it. She actually just retired from teaching at Pikes Peak Community College, and she used to teach up and coming paramedics and EMTs in doing first aid and CPR. So she's very good at that job. So if you're interested in that, I can let you know the next dates. Actually, I think we have, oh no, we just had one here recently. So we talked about the needle and fire here, so I won't belabor that, but you know, that link for this, by the way, I'll give that slide, these slides to Deb as well. So you'll be able to click on the link and share that as you'd like. As far as fire mitigation techniques here, we'll go on with that. And for this area, we recommend, I know it can be a lot to consider all the work that needs to be done here, but we try to get folks to focus on certain levels. So if you take your house, that's one of the 3 areas that we recommend you focus on. And you work on the ground and the vegetation within 30 feet around your residence. In that concept, you also consider ladder fuels. And that's the concept is that vegetation goes from a grass fire. And if that tall grass is interlaced with a bush, and that fire will feed into the bush. And then if that bush is underneath a large tree, then it climbs from the ground into the tree and then into the crown. And then you have a much larger problem at that point. And then it will go tree to tree, crown to crown, and then you have a large forest fire. So if you limb up your trees up to about 8 to 10 feet, then that will help prevent some of that concern with the fire climbing up into the trees and then becoming much worse. We also emphasize avenues of approach. So if you look at the vegetation along your driveway and then streets, then that will help you with evacuation and also help the first responders come in. We think that these 3 aspects of looking at your house, your driveway, and alongside your street can be performed by you alone here because most of that vegetation is relatively small. The large trees, then we of course recommend that you start looking at a tree service to get that. But the goal of all of those focus areas is that it'll help you improve your home survivability, help you with evacuation safety and getting out of your property and out of the neighborhood, and then help the first responders feel confident to come in and then save our homes and residences. So I'm gonna also bring up another video, and I'm gonna show a picture or a short video or a clip of a video of firefighters protecting homes in the Black Forest. And you'll see the grass fire, what you think with very low grass. Just if you imagine the grass height and think that the fire becomes twice the height of the vegetation, it'll give you an impact of even having fires at, say 4 inches can be significant in danger and hazard here. And then also I'll play a clip from our neighborhood ambassador course from a firefighter in Evergreen Fire Rescue who talks about how long they take in serving or assessing a house before they decide to either save it or move on. So let me bring up the next video.
Now you see that the fire is trying to travel up the trees, but the homeowner did a good job of trimming those trees back up to about 10 feet so the branches don't catch on fire, the low-hanging branches. Managing the trees like this will keep the fire from spreading into the crown of the trees, which is very bad. And now the fire is starting to burn up to the mulch, and then lots of smoke starting to be produced. I'm taping this from behind the hot tub on the back of the deck, trying to keep myself from having to be subjected to too much heat, and mostly my camera.
So notice in that video, the firefighter was focused on the ground fire approaching the house. and he really was less focused about the fire that was climbing into the tree, because he saw that that tree had been limbed up, and he knew that at some point that would not continue to climb up. So it's pretty interesting watching that. So that was in our backyard with the Black Forest fire. And then here is the other video. Oh, dang it. Sorry, I thought I had that posted up. No, I don't. Okay, I'll see if I can get that back up again. The gist of that is that the firefighters are only going to spend a very short period of time, and they're going to take a very quick look at your house, and it's going to be seconds, and they're going to make a determination. If they can see the back of the house and or see all aspects, they'll have all the information they need with to make a decision within 15 seconds or so. And then they're going to decide whether or not the house is savable or not. And if they deem that it's too hazardous for them, they are going to move on and find the house that they think that is less risk to them, but that they can also save as well. So it's really important for folks to think just the firefighters are going to assume some risk, but they are not going to sacrifice themselves for anyone's individual property. It's just, you know, they have families as well as everyone else. So they're going to do their best to try to save properties, but if it seems like it is too high of a risk, they're going to move on and move on quickly. So a lot of the information that I'm referencing with you, you will be able to access. And if you wanted to look at your own home assessment and look at the considerations that are involved with wildfire assessments for your property, you can find it at this link here. I'm going to talk about a lot of these things in very aggregate or a summary type of format here, but the home assessment checklist that you see here with the link has the individual items for your own consideration. So, and it kind of gives you a range of thoughts on how much it would cost for you to do that. If I come out and take a look at your house, I would be using this particular form to do the assessment. So this is a free resource for everyone to be able to use and access. It's pretty thorough, and it gives you a lot of different considerations for looking at your house, both from a vegetation perspective and then also the home hardening. So what aspects can you do to modify your house to make it more fire ready? So we're going to talk about the, oh, here we go. We got one more person coming in. Awesome. We're going to start discussing the home ignition zone. So you'll hear, I've seen a number of different distance groupings for the home ignition zone, but the ones that I've seen that are the most common are like this one. Within 5 feet of the house, 0 to 5 feet, then 5 to 30 feet, and then 30 feet to 100 feet. And so the idea behind the 0 to 5 is you minimize the amount of vegetation within that area. So then you, it doesn't mean that you can have vegetation, but you certainly want to minimize those aspects within that that range, because that will then basically move and be directly connected into the house. So you want to minimize that. And we'll go into more details about this here. And then from 5 to 30 feet, then you're going to look to reduce the grass and keep things lower, so that you saw what we were looking at the past video with the Black Forest fire. Then if you're able to keep the fire at a very low level, then that makes the firefighters more confident to come in that particular area, and also will help keep the flames from getting too high and then causing more concern in basically having high flame lengths near the house. So if you're able to do that and keep the vegetation low, as well as keep your trees limbed up, it will be helpful in that range. And then outside of 30 feet, then you can start allowing more, vegetation in that area. You still want to have some aspects outside that 30 feet, like keeping your wood piles out in that distance, but then you can start to look at having more trees, more vegetation in that 30 to 100 feet zone if you have the luxury of being able to have that amount of property. So in the 0 to 5 foot fuel-free zone, and that's what I've heard referenced here, you want to use non-combustible landscaping adjacent to the house. So if you can get rocks, flagstone, concrete, think about walking paths immediate around your house, and you could use those to help provide that 0 to 5 foot barrier. You want to use low growing, when we say succulent type, it basically plants that have a lot of water content in it in the garden beds around your house. You certainly don't want to have any grass moving into some areas like you see in the picture. Fire moved into this, was directly connected into the staircase that led into the porch, and then started burning up into the porch. So that basically laddered up, but it laddered up into the house. So looking at non-combustible materials. And then also you want to remove those combustible materials connected to the house. So your firewood piles, you want to move away from the house. I know in the winter, we want to keep them closer, but that of course does not reduce the fire risk. It just, increases it. As you can see in that picture here, a fire was burning on that deck and was headed towards that wood pile, but a firefighter came along and was able to put it out before it basically that wood pile caught on fire. So, and then you also want to look at pruning branches overhanging the house. So anything that would prevent the fire from dropping more embers and burning materials directly onto your roof. And then you want to clean the roof and gutters of your dead debris and pine needles. In your 5 to 30 foot zone, you want to look at creating vegetation groups or islands, and you can use landscaping or walls to help break up continuous fuel. So we don't tend to think about that a lot, but having small walls that separate, you can have vegetation that comes up towards your house, but if you have a wall that sits up a bit, that creates a fire break. So being creative in your landscape design while still bringing in attractive looking vegetation is still possible. It doesn't mean that you have to clear cut to be able to have a fire mitigated property. And I've already mentioned removing the ladder fuels here, as you saw in the video and as you see in the picture. If it burns up, then the tree like it is there, then it'll stop at some point, and then we'll move on. I've seen in areas in the Black Forest, actually it was along the roadside, I think it's Volma Road, you can see some trees where there are scorch marks and fire burn marks that go up about 5-6 feet on some of those trees. So they survived that fire here because it appears that they were limbed up. If you can keep your grasses and lawn and your wildflowers less than 4 feet high, I know it becomes a struggle here. I remember one year, I think it was 2014, we got a ton of rain and we had a ton of tall green grass, and it looked beautiful. But at some point in August and September, green grass turns into brown and it dries out. And then it becomes, if you have, like a 2 to, I saw in some instances like 2 to 3 foot high grasses, then you could have 6 foot flame lights if you had a fire in that area. So look to try to store your firewood outside the zone. And then I know it's kind of tough, but if you can at all possible, keep your vehicles outside of this combustible zone. Also, food for thought, if you have breaks in there, I know our slopes aren't as big as they are on the left-hand side, but just wanted to point out the concrete that provides a barrier from the lower level vegetation from burning up into that other area. If you have a bad one day, then of course it might be able to jump it, but at least that's some barrier. And then the landscaping that I talked about earlier here, this is a great example. Of course, much more of a steep landscaping area, but you could still have that same type of separation in garden beds if you just if you on a lower level, you just have to pile it up a little bit more. In the 30 to 100 foot zone, you want to start thinking about creating lateral spacing between large tree groupings. And it doesn't mean like you have to have 10 feet between each tree. And when we say between tree groupings, we're talking branch to branch, not from trunk to trunk. It's from a branch to branch to provide lateral spacing. You can have groups of trees and think about it as an island of trees. If you have spacing between them, then you can do that. There's a lot of discussion about our desire for folks to have privacy. Well, you could still have screening out towards this 30 to 100 foot zone, but if you were to offset your tree groupings, you could still have that screening and still have the lateral space between them. So it's just a matter of being a little bit imaginative and being very specific and detailed about where you put your vegetation, but you could still have those concepts of mitigation and privacy. And then also consider separation between your property and your neighbors. I talk often with my neighbor who has a concern with her neighbor, and that person is not very interested in performing any or much fire mitigation and doing much work at all. So if you have one of those type of neighbors, then consider a boundary of the same sort of type of thing between your property and theirs. The fires tend to move uphill and then up drainage areas. We don't have a lot of uphill areas. We have a little bit of a slope, but we do have drainage areas. So the fires will travel uphill, up those drainage areas. And when I had firefighter, Deb remembers this, we did a tour back in, I think it was 2015 or 2016, and brought the then battalion chief and did a ride around our neighborhood that asked, what were the specific concerns in our neighborhood? And one of the things that he mentioned was our drainage areas. So, please, if you have one of those drainage areas, and I have one that runs through mine, consider that in your mitigation work. And then with your sloping, the spacing between your trees, the greater the slope, the greater the distance you should have between your trees along that slope. Oh yeah, I'm going to show you another video. Now, this one will be a fire in a neighborhood, and you'll see that the fire starts at a very low area. It doesn't seem like to be very significant. And for those juniper fans out there, you're going to start to see that maybe you don't want to have juniper. This fire gets into this juniper bush. Luckily, the house is a good distance away from it. But if the house were really close, that house would have been lost. So bring that. Where did we go? Oh, come on.
House on fire, 2 doors. Copy.
Tom Sarah, Buckhorn IC. Also confirming it's 18067 is where the extension is, or down from that.
The address is 18067 Orange Street.
Zulu, truck 304. All right, pass command over to 142. I'm assuming Alpha. We're going to be operating to your easternmost portion. Yeah.
Concept Battalion 142 on scene. I'll be assuming.
Okay. Here, let me take it.
Battalion 142, copy. Concept from IC. You can also expedite law enforcement for traffic control. We've been shut down.
All right, I'm going to stop it here for a second. Note these two bushes here. These are junipers here, and notice the house that's over here. So the fire is right down in this gully. It's pretty low right now.
Orange and
Hey, can you get any more hose? I see Alpha, priority on the next rig. We had immediate structure threat on Alpha. Can you pull more hose?
Delta, I see 148. I'll start working on the ropes.
All right, shut down, shut down. Is it thrown out?
148,
Yeah.
1987.
Water!
Those are pretty scary flame lengths on that juniper. And I've seen, some folks that want to have the sprawling juniper in and around their yard as a front decoration. And I have a horrible thought of, that catching on fire and working towards that. So that and Gable oak, or the vegetation called scrub oak here, those burn at 3 times the vegetation height, both laterally and vertically. So very oily type of tree and bush. So I would stay away from those, but food for thought if you're looking to continue using that. For your ingress and egress, make sure that not just only your gates, but your driveway is wide enough to accommodate the emergency equipment. They generally prefer to have a turnaround so that they can egress as fast as they can. So if you have that ability to make a turn in your driveway or your front yard area for the fire vehicles, they may not bring a large vehicle like this and be able to bring it in a brush truck, but the larger trucks carry more water too. So food for thought with that. Regarding home hardening techniques here, I think one of the biggest concerns that we have here is regarding ember storm. And that's when you're in a full-fledged fire and the embers are getting caught into the wind, or being blown by the wind ahead of the fire. And that could be blown, those embers can be blown like a mile or two in front of that particular fire. The picture at the bottom right was a common occurrence in the Black Forest fire. If you look, the whole house is surrounded by green vegetation, but the house is gone. So embers ahead of that storm, or that fire, landed in the vicinity of the property, and the house had very flammable material in the vicinity of the house, and it moved into the house, and the house caught on fire and it was gone. There's another video that I'll play for here in a second, but the Institute for Business and Home Safety has a video, and I'm happy to share that one with you also. But this house on the bottom left has 2 facades. One is a very flammable type materials like cedar shake shingles and a non-Class A roof. Sorry about that. Somebody has the audacity to walk down the street. Can you believe that? And then the house on the right has more ember resistant materials, as like concrete backerboard and those types of facade areas here. And that's a very interesting video. This is all done inside of a big, huge facility, and they basically build these 2 facades there. And you can kind of see a little bit, there's a little semicircle area here. It's actually on a rotating disc, and they basically create embers and they blow it at the house. And then the embers laying around the house, and it does what it does. You know, if it's flammable, it catches on fire. But I have one more video to show you here about flying embers that was in a fire here. So this is another interesting aspect. This one's only a minute. That's the right side of the street here. Of course, you see the left side full flame, but the embers are starting to go across the street here into the vegetation on the right side of the street. By the way, this is a very late evacuation decision. Look how quickly that bush went from very few, very small fire to 20-foot flame lengths now blowing towards the house. So it doesn't take long, and if you have vegetation in the wrong spot and the embers laying there,
Eat healthy and
embers
feel
are
your
going to do
best.
it.
You've got to try Kachava. Kachava is the world's healthiest all-in-one meal shake. It's made with over 70 plant-based superfoods and nutrients.
Regarding some home hardening considerations for your balconies and decks, look at non-combustible materials. And this is where I know this is very expensive to do. And some things you may not be able to do immediately. It may take you time to consider, but think about these when it comes time and you have the ability to make the changes. But if you make your balconies and decks, think about non-combustible materials. To what I understand, talking to building material or folks that work in the construction industry, the Trex, if you put that out, it tends to melt, not burn. The only concern that you have to watch is that, of course, the supporting decking underneath the Trex tends to be often used, or the folks tend to use that build that will use normal wood. So think about what they're using for the supporting elements for that deck when they put those in. And then also the furniture that you have on there too. I'm telling you stuff that I have a struggle with right now. We have a wooden deck, and then we also have some flammable, benches on here. My wife and I go round and round on this every year, but the first thing that I'm doing is pitching stuff off the side, and I'm looking at now some ways to be able to get some intumescent paint, and basically that's a paint that basically bubbles up if that fire approaches it, and then helps push the flames away so to create space so it won't catch on fire. It's going to be more expensive, but I'm not going to do that with my whole wood facade, but for my deck, I'm considering it pretty strongly here. Roofs, Class A preferred. There are different grades of classes for the roofs. The A is the best, and you'll see there are actually asphalt shingles that are Class A rated, meaning like they're the highest fire resistance to it. Doesn't mean it's fireproof, it means it's fire resistant. And then, many folks will move to a metal roof too to help provide the most protection. But there are some grades of asphalt shingles that have a Class A rating. So think about that as you're looking at your roof replacements. And then also you want to make sure you clear debris. Anything that piles up in all those corners, wherever the vegetation lands, well, that's where the embers are going to go also during the fire. So if you have vegetation along the edge, like you see with that dormer there, the embers will land there and then also catch that vegetation on fire. For the eaves and gutters, look at the front part of your, I know this is an exaggeration in the Spanish tile, but if you have an asphalt roof, look to see whether or not that roof is peeling up at the very edge and providing places where embers can go. If it appears that it's a place where embers can sneak into, they will. So look at trying to get those resolved, and then keep your gutters clear of debris here. And then also consider the type of gutter that you have. The vinyl gutters will burn and melt, and then they will drip the material that's burning in them onto the ground. And if you have stuff, flammable material that is below that, then that stuff will catch on fire too. The steel gutters will not, they will basically survive the burning. The material in it will burn, and then it will generally survive. You just have to watch whether or not that wood facade right near where that gutter is, if that's exposed, and if flames can creep up into that. For vents, we have air vents along the soffits here. Think about putting screens on the inside of the vents, and that helps with embers, preventing embers from sneaking in and then going into your the inside of your house and getting into your insulation from the inside. So the 1/8" screening helps to prevent that. It doesn't guarantee it, but it certainly does minimize it. Windows and doors, look at double pane windows. Most of us have that type of window, but strongly consider having that, because if there's a fire immediately outside the house and the outer pane breaks, then the inner pane will provide some measure of protection here. And then weatherproofing your doors to make sure, if you have a wooden door, then that will help provide some measure of protection. If of course you have a metal door, then in a fire rated one, then that's a better set of protections here. For the walls and fencing, make sure that your wooden fencing doesn't run and connect directly to your house. As you can see with this picture in the middle, on the right side, that fence started to catch on fire, and a firefighter came by and then knocked down the fencing to create a break in the middle. But if that person had not been there, that fire would have run directly into the house. And think about it as your fence is serving as a fuse in there if you're already connected. So think about using non-combustible materials. In this bottom right picture, the lighter color fencing is actually metal fencing, and it's a little bit more rusty, but it's more of a wood look along the way. So think about that. If you don't want that type of fencing, and maybe it's cost prohibitive, at least put some metal bar between the fence and then the house itself. All right, so looking at some before and after pictures here of some work that we've done here with our group. And I think this was 2017 in Red Rock Ranch. The picture on the upper left shows a heavily vegetated area of scrub oak. If you're traveling and you have firefighters coming in, that was a big significant concern for that homeowner. So she was willing to actually, she asked us to cut as much as she could. She actually wanted to see, she had some large rocks that she had put there many, many years ago. She wanted to see them again, but they got overgrown by the scrub oak that was there. So we helped reduce that along a roadside and provide much less of a fire risk for first responders responding inside that neighborhood. Her property ran up to this larger tree in the back. So then she was concerned about firefighters getting into that area and wanted to make sure that they were able to do so. On the bottom left picture, you see more scrub oak into trees. We didn't get rid of all of it, but that, we did what she wanted to do here. So we would have recommended removing this gamble oak because it's a ladder fuel and could possibly feed into the crown, but this is what she wanted. So we abided by her wishes with that, but it definitely does look better and much less in terms of the amount of vegetation in that specific area. In this example, we have a large tree overhanging a house, and that's a significant risk if you had an ember storm area or concern, and then these bushes burned into this tree, then this house would be lost. They removed the tree, and it looks very nice. There are a lot less trees around there. They do have a bush that's fairly close, but I don't know what type it is, honestly speaking, but they may be able to do something with that, and I'm not sure what's between that bush and the house, but it's the bigger concern with the tree removal is there and present. So they did a great job of that. This is some work we did actually in the Ute Pass, and there's a neighborhood on the Pikes Peak Highway that leads up to the top of Pikes Peak and the North Pole. We worked with a couple of homeowners in that area to help them reduce their vegetation. As you can see on the left side, pretty heavily vegetated along the slope, and knocked that down quite a bit. On this property here, you can see pretty heavily vegetated here on the top picture, and then reduced a lot of that and got rid of a lot of the vegetation there. You can still have some screening here, but there was a huge amount of vegetation. This is a huge ladder fuel concern. These bushes feeding into the pine trees, that would have created a crown fire pretty quickly. And then this was in Red Rocks Ranch, once again here, another property owner and reduced some of the vegetation there. Notice pretty thick going from the grass into bushes that fed into the trees. So we worked to try to get rid of those bushes here. Still, in my view, provided an attractive landscaping for the folks here, but reduced the fire risk significantly. And then wanted to show a few examples of trees or houses in the local area that are improved in terms of mitigation. I wouldn't call it a healthy forest, but in terms of immediate fire risk, you'd notice that the trees are limbed up pretty high. Here you don't see any overhanging, significant overhanging trees at a low level along the driveway. So from a firefighter's perspective, that would look attractive in their approach to those particular houses. And then here are a number of resources that I have for you with links here, the assessment checklist that I mentioned earlier. We have neighborhood ambassador training modules. So both the home ignition zones and home hardening, we have 2 separate videos on that, and they're each about an hour in length, and they go into very specific detail about the considerations for each one of those. So if you want to take a look at that, those are all on YouTube and available for you to view. We are not professionals in terms of our video talent here, so I ask you to watch that with some grace here. But I think the information is pretty good within those videos. Now, the fire ignition resistant vegetation, a lot of people wonder, you tell me I need to get rid of stuff, but what can I have? We had a session with Irene Shanley, who is with the Colorado State University Forest Extension in El Paso County. And she talks about a whole hour of the types of vegetation that you can put in and around your house. And some of the pictures that I showed earlier were clips from her video that she provided to us. Excuse me. So take a look at that. That's free and on YouTube as well. I know one of the questions that often comes up is regarding the easements and can we work in easements. I talked with the folks at the County Office of Emergency Management, and I wanted to see if we can get some idea if we could work in there. And it's not a great answer, but the answer that we got from the county is that you can work in the easements if you file a permit with the El Paso County Public Works Department. It's a 6-page document, and you'll see that many of the elements don't fit. I would just look at the one section that talks about the areas that you want to, basically it's a no dig, no damage work in the easement area, and submit that here. So I just got that answer back here yesterday on this. And then
Andre, can I just interject there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Elizabeth and I have met with the works guy, and he said we could, as an association, submit a permit so that all homeowners can work in their easements. And so we are, as an association, in the process of doing that.
That's awesome. I mean, the fact that you could do it for a whole neighborhood or a whole section of your neighborhood is fantastic versus having all of those people submit individual permit applications. It would be ridiculous in the amount of paperwork that they would have to process. So that's great. Thanks, Deb. I'll pass that on to others. That's really great news. And then the Pikes Peak Office of Emergency Management, they have a whole website with a lot of different resources on fire mitigation. And then also, I didn't talk today much about evacuation considerations, but everyone should have a good evacuation plan for wildfire situations, and look at your own personal preparedness there. They have a lot of good information there. And then also recommend folks sign up for the El Paso Teller County 911 peak alerts video for the, I'm sorry, not the video, for the peak alerts service to receive emergency notifications in case of a fire. So if you go to peakalerts.org and go to the website, you can sign up. You don't have to have a landline. You can sign up with your cell phones on there. And then also you can have if you have family members that live in a different neighborhood, and you can put their numbers down there so then they would receive the notifications that you would receive in that. So then they would know that you're, in an evacuation situation. And with that, I'll take any questions, thoughts, concerns that you guys have.
Andre?
Yes.
It's Elizabeth here. Let me find my video. Anyways, I don't know how to turn my video on.
That's okay.
I was looking at the gamble oak or the scrub oak, and my question was, on that property that you did, you limbed it all the way up and got the underbrush cleared away. But does that just make it less flammable, but still dangerous, or what's the answer?
Yeah, in essence, you don't have, you have less of a ladder concern because the lower level vegetation is not present. But at some point, that gamble oak would need to be retreated. In essence, you'd have to keep it trimmed, to keep it looking like, think about it like the, I can't remember the name in terms of the Japanese tree art, but in essence,
bonsai.
Yeah, you treat it like a bonsai tree and keep the lower level branches from growing. It's a very persistent type of bush and a tree. It grows back very, very quickly. And so you could, even if you cut that, years later, you would, within a couple of years, you would have to be dealing with it again. So the only way to really get rid of it is to, dig up the whole tree and roots and whatnot. If you have a large stand of it, you may be going to battle with it for quite a few years. So, but cutting it gives you an measure of safety if you're willing to just deal with the smaller level sprouts that come up. That's a better solution than letting them get overgrown. But the lower level pieces, if you at least keep it limbed up, it reduces your risk. So this is all about risk reduction, folks.
Is it the leaves that are flammable, or is the stem pretty flammable also? Or
it is. It contains a lot of oil inside of it. So if you had a grass fire that bled into that, it's possible, like we saw in the Black Forest fire video that we showed, that it could burn up into the higher bushier areas here. So it's definitely possible. Doesn't reduce it. Everything we're doing here is reducing your risk. There are very few perfect solutions, and the ones that you do have, you have a moon landscape. So you have to decide on what level of risk that you're willing to accept relative to your house. Oh, before I forget, please, 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 everyone, check your homeowner's insurance. In case you've done everything that you think to do, you've put in a lot of work, and the potential is still there that you could lose your house. Make sure that when you are looking at your insurance policy, that your basement and your foundation is covered in that insurance policy. During the Waldo Canyon fire, we had many, many neighborhoods I think it was the Mountain Shadows neighborhood, that we learned that they were not able to rebuild their house because the fire burned so hot that the foundation turned, the fire turned the foundation and the basement walls into chalk. So the whole basement and the foundation had to be rebuilt and re-poured, and they were not able to use that. And there were many folks that didn't have their basements covered. So they had lost everything, and then found out they had to put an outlay of $30,000 more to have their house rebuilt. So the insurance companies were ready to go, but they wouldn't rebuild until they had a suitable foundation for that house. So please check your homeowner's insurance to make sure that your basement and your foundation are covered. But good question. Appreciate that. Any others?
There's a couple of chat questions. So Don, did you want to ask your question?
Okay, so who does assessments and how do we contact them? Two initial thoughts.
At the very beginning, you said that you gave assessments, and I assume you're not the only one. So I was just wondering, who and how we reach them.
The firefighters will do it. They're becoming more and more challenged to do it. So if you're going to get them to come out and take a look at your house, allow some time for it. But the Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Department, I understand, is willing to do it. More recently, we used to also have folks come from the Forestry Service here, Colorado State Forest Service, and Dave Root, who was our good friend in this work, has retired recently, and the folks that have replaced him now, it appears that they are charging for that service now for folks to do it. So I would recommend looking at the fire department first. If you have to go to the Forest Service, then they can do it. There are some other nonprofits that will do it. I think we're scheduled on the 27th, is that right? To do a
yes, the
session.
27th.
So what I'm going to do, and actually I'm looking for volunteers, so I need 2 homes to do the project on. But in essence, I'm going to do a demo of a home assessment on the first house, and then we're going to go to the second house, and then we're going to let the folks that attend that do an assessment using those same thoughts and principles and the thoughts that we were talking about tonight. And then we'll discuss those different aspects for that second house along the way. So that'll give you some information on how to do it that way. And then if you're willing to work directly, myself and Lisa Hatfield, she's my co-leader in my group, we also do assessments. We don't charge anything for them.
Vicki, I know you have asked Tri-Lakes Fire Department for an assessment. Have you been waiting about 6 weeks, would you say?
Yes, we actually called 3 times and they were supposed to call me back.
Sorry, your audio isn't very good.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So my husband just has a really bad voice, apparently.
Yeah.
He's tried 3 times, and there was a little bit of phone tag, and then the last time I just think they didn't get back. It was is it Shannon Valdez, I think is maybe the name of the man. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Not to me.
I heard that
you can talk.
I can talk?
Yeah. This is Margaret. Yeah, this is Margaret Fiandaco, and I called them, but they never got back with me, and I haven't really called them back to see what happened there.
And it's been a couple of months or more, right?
Yeah, it's been a while. well, yeah, 2 or 3 months, maybe.
But you have an opportunity for Andre to do an assessment on the 27th of July. So if anyone wants to volunteer for that.
Yeah, when I did,
yeah, she would, on the 27th of July, as far as we know, she would like to do that. That's Margaret Fiandaco.
Okay, so you've got one volunteer, Andre.
What's the address and what time?
Well, we're going to do it at 4:30. That's already been set. If that's convenient for you, Margaret.
4:30.
Yes.
4:30 on the 27th.
I'll look at
her address is 10 Saddlehorn Trail. And she does need to confirm her schedule to make sure there's nothing going on, but right now we don't know of anything.
Okay, awesome.
And we've got another, we have another volunteer as well on Pinewood Loop. That's Paula and JD on 105 Pinewood Loop.
Awesome.
So Margaret, if you cannot make it, could you email me?
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
deb.fiala@comcast.net. I'm the lady that sends the newsletters out. And then I've got a note of everybody that's at this meeting. And so I will confirm a little bit closer to the 27th of where we're going to meet at 4:30. And then if you can make it, great.
Yeah, I'll take a look at them, Deb, and see which one works out the best in terms of the flow. Okay, and I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds great. And I think we had another question from JD.
Yeah, Aspen were good around the house. Why? In terms of saving the house, I'm not sure why they said they saved the house, but in terms of usually aspens are in an area that has more water, and they tend to have a more widely ranging root system here that transports water in the ground, so that the water tends to be a little bit closer to the surface. So protecting it, unlike the pine trees, that it doesn't seem to help at all with that. But that's the one aspect that I've heard about it. You may hear some folks talk about concerns with fires burning underground within aspen systems there, but when that happens, to my understanding, you have much looser soil than what we're dealing with what we have in our neighborhood here. So the aspect that I understand, it has to do with the amount of water that aspens are normally growing in and the proximity to the surface.
Okay.
Margaret has a question regarding that, please.
Well, not regarding that. But,
oh, sorry.
Okay. Should you take the propane tank off your deck?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Propane tank. Can you keep it on your deck, or should you take it off? A propane tank?
Oh, propane tank. So two concepts I've heard from the firefighters on that. If you have a fire that's coming in proximity, you have two recommendations: put it in your garage, or put it far away from your house. But
I thought it was bad to put it in your garage.
Excuse me?
I understood it was dangerous to put a propane tank in your garage.
If it's starting to burn your house, then the propane tank is, your house is already on fire by that time. So I think, I guess you could say that it can make it worse.
But when you're not having a fire, is it okay to keep it on there?
It's a matter of the risk that you're willing to take with it here, but they tend to tell you if you're not going to be there, here, then you would want to keep it away from your house or inside.
Okay. And the other thing is blue spruce. I did trim mine, and now they look awful. But is blue spruce not a good tree to have them? Because they tend to grow low to the ground.
They do. And so you can have the nice looking house that has the branches dipping into the grass, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, you could remove the tree, which would be horrible because they become beautiful looking trees, or you can limb them up. You know, there are no great solutions with it. Usually those spruces too, people tend to try to, they've been growing close, um, well, very close to the house. So that makes it that much worse too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, with that, I applaud all the work that everyone's doing in the neighborhood. You know, after all this time, we're still having chipping days that are, you know, putting a lot of vegetation out there to chip. And the fact that we wore out the firefighters in their chipping day last time speaks to a lot of the effort and seriousness to which our residents are taking this. So I really applaud all the work that everyone's doing in the neighborhood, and listening to Deb how it was way before. It's better. And I even in the 10 years, I looked at an old Google picture that the Google car came by our street and took pictures of the house and the vegetation that I had along the road, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it was terrible here. So, and you see improvements all along the neighborhood here. So I just encourage people to keep working at it. It will take a while, and then, you know, at some point, when you take care of all the ladder fuel, then you can start working on the larger tree removal or reduce the amount of trees that you have there. But, you know, there's plenty of work still to do on the lower level vegetation. So I just ask people keep pushing and you know, try to connect with folks and resources. We're doing a great job in this neighborhood.
I do have a question about duff. Would you consider the removal of that 5 foot from the house, 30 feet from the house? What's your opinion?
Definitely 5 feet here for sure. The more you reduce the duff out to 30, the better off you are with that. Dave Root we used to ask him about the thickness of the duff to be concerned about, and he was not concerned about, like, say, wood chips greater than 4 inches in depth. So if you have 4 inches of pine needles, it's still a ground fire and a low ground fire. If you have very, very deep pine needles, then the flame lengths could be higher. So I would consider reducing that, but definitely within 5 feet, and then, you know, reduce it out to 30 if you can, slowly over time. I know we have in our neighbor, my neighbors are the haters, and let's just say Bob's been doing it, and he goes out there a little bit at a time every day to reduce the duff in his on his property. Bob's a little over 80, as I understand, and he's getting after it every day, and he does a little bit each day. And if you look at his yard, it looks great. So you don't have to do it all at once. You can still work on it a little bit at a time. And I think it's great that we do the duff bins every year. It's awesome, and I understand. I didn't use them this year, but in the past they've been full, and so that's impressive with the amount of work that folks are willing to do to clean that up.
I do have a question, something that Don has just brought up about the 27th. He's talking about me sending out a reminder. I understood that the 27th was a follow-on from this particular meeting. Because it's putting into practice what you've introduced to us this evening. So I will put a reminder out to the people that are at this meeting, but not the neighborhood. Is that okay? Or
fine with the whole neighborhood showing up? You know, if we're going to put out the video, they'll be able to access and see the presentation through the recording. So then if they watch the recording and then they want to come out on the 27th, welcome anybody that wants to come. And even if they're not able to watch and they want to go through that, I certainly welcome anybody who wants to come out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We'll need to know the addresses, Deb.
Yeah, I don't know them yet. Andre's going to look at the two, the addresses of the two volunteers, and he's going to assess which one we go to first. So when he's given me that information, then I will put that out. And as long as JD and Paula and Margaret, are you okay with me putting your addresses out to the whole neighborhood?
Yeah, there's no problem with that.
Okay, and JD, you say no, please. What does that mean?
I'm fine with you putting out the addresses.
Okay.
Okay.
And JD and Paula, do I get a yes from you, or oh, do not publish our address? Okay, then we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that with Andre, but I will definitely not publish your address. Okay.
Well, let's just start at 10 Saddlehorn Trail then. We'll just say we'll start at the Saddlehorn address, and then we'll tell everybody where we're going, and we'll just caravan from that first location over to the next one.
So is that okay, JD and Margaret? So Margaret's address will be published, and then whoever's at the meeting will tell them about your address. Is that okay?
Margaret's okay with that.
Okay, and JD and Paula, I know you've got to write that down, or email me. Because if you're not comfortable with that, if you're not comfortable with okay, all right, so you're not comfortable. Okay, so we're going to need a second address.
Okay, well, yeah, we need a different address then.
Is there anybody here that would like to volunteer their address? Well, not volunteer their address, but volunteer to have the assessment.
And Andre, this is Lonnie, you can always do mine. It probably is less instructive than some of the others, but if you're out of the properties, come to my house.
And I've just got the okay from Stefan. You can come to my home, and you'll probably have more to talk about at my home than you will Lonnie's. So,
okay.
And I don't
work. So I that's not totally true. You guys had some big piles of.
And you can assess, and it can either be us first or Margaret first. I don't mind publishing the address.
We have one question. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know whether I apologize because I can't hear very well, but I have a question about the pine needles. Now, I understood that if you remove all the pine needles, then you get weeds. So, I mean, should you only go so far down with the pine needles or the duff or whatever you call it?
It's a choice, here. So you can keep some measure of pine needles to suppress the weeds and grass from growing if that's a significant concern for you. So you can still keep some pine needles, just recommend not having a very, very deep layer of them here. So it's a trade-off, right? Yeah, if you remove it, then you're gonna, actually in some places they won't grow at all and just have water runoff here. So you have to be careful about where you're doing that. That's been my experience so far. I did a huge, I think I had about a good 6 inches of duff, in my property when we first got it. And I removed a lot from the front here, and then, but the grass doesn't come up very quickly here. It's been very slow. And I'd say about every couple of years we do a significant duff removal on those properties, because I just don't want to have a large run of pine needles if we do get a fire. I'm sure we're going to get an ember storm, and I'm still not fully solved on that area with my own house in terms of the vegetation inside 5 feet. So I want to reduce that here. So it's a trade-off. I'm sorry to say that people are looking for permanent solutions. So you remove one aspect, you get another problem. And so which one would you rather live with? I'm not sure about the videotaping on the assessment piece here. Usually, you know, I don't have a paid videographer.
No, and
do that.
Vicky, if you want to contact me, you can come via my house when you're back in town, and I can kind of relay to you what everyone said about the property. So that might be of help to you.
Okay, well, that's very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Yeah, it just happens to fall on the weekend. We're going to be gone, and I heard I got that you're videotaping this recording, but didn't know if that applied to your assessment. But I will do that, Deb. That sounds like a good alternative. We're going to still keep trying with the Tri-Lakes fire, see if we can get somebody out in the meantime. And to answer your question, I don't think I had. It was at the last meeting that we talked about it, and you all gave us the tip on how to go about that, and Bob called the next day. So it's maybe been about 4 weeks that he's been trying.
This is Joe, Margaret's daughter. And there's a possibility I might be able to get somebody to come and videotape it. I can reach out to them and see if they have any interest.
I'm open to it, and I just, you know, have a hard time working a camera and talking at the same time and looking at my checklist. So that would be fine with me.
Would I reach out to Deb or to you about that?
It doesn't matter. I mean, if the person turns the video, if no one minds, that's fine. But I think I've solved Vicky's issue. I can talk to her about what was wrong about my property. I'm sure there's going to be plenty.
Okay. Thank you.
There's always plenty to do.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Could you explain it a little bit more?
Whose question is that, Andre?
This is Don to everyone. On Duff Needles, a long time ago, I worked a fire line outside of Craig, and the firefighters showed how embers could burn underneath the surface and then flare up days, hours later. They suggested clearing within 30 feet. Is that still the best plan? So we're talking about 30 feet from the house, yes.
Yeah, Andre, the deal was that this was back in the 80s, actually, when they had that big fire outside Craig and Meeker up in northern Colorado. I was working at a camp and on a maintenance crew, and we volunteered to work the fire line. And we were kind of the mop-up crew. We weren't on the front lines, but we were mopping up afterwards. Mm-hmm. And we went through a 3-day training. It was a 10-day stint. We did 3 days of training, followed by 7 days on the line. And some of the stuff they showed us was where they had these needles and stuff piled up. And like you said, some places it was 8, 10, 12 inches deep. And the fire had gone over, and they weren't as worried about the grass because the grass would just burn up and be done, basically. But where these basically, it was mostly pine needles were piled up. They showed places around trees and where the fire had gotten underneath and just created kind of like an ember bed. And so, you know, they went and they showed us where you'd think it'd be done, and they'd flip it with a shovel and the thing would flare up again. And so based on that, they were saying you should clear to the ground. So you'd said 4 inches, but they were saying clear to the ground within, you know, I don't think it was 30 feet, but it was like 10 or something like that. It was more than 5. And I just wondered if you had,
ideally, you know, removing all the pine needles will give you the largest measure of safety. The 30-foot is the zone, the second zone here. So the recommendation is to get and minimize the amount of vegetation inside that out to 30 feet. You may see some places that may list 15, but I would, definitely keep anything that could run up close to my house. Here, 30 feet is, you know, even still kind of scary close. You saw in that video, there was grass that was moving in towards mulch that was immediately outside that deck here, and that was well within 30 feet. So if you had a significant amount of pine needles in there, it would run potentially run up just like the flames for the grass that you saw in that video. I've seen other videos where it's basically forest floor and no grass, but it's pine needles, and it ran very similar to what I saw with the grass that we had in the video. And like you mentioned, Don, yeah, it's burning underneath. If you have a very deep, thick layer of that, if you expose that to oxygen, then fire triangle is very present: heat, and then flame, and then oxygen. If you have all our fuel, your heat, and then your oxygen, you have a potential to reignite that flame. So that's possible.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, that's all I have, Deb. Anything that you'd like to mention before we go? You're on mute, Deb. Deb, you're muted.
It's probably a good thing. A lot of people would like to do that for all the time. I just want to say thank you so much. Doesn't matter how much you look and read. We've been in this area for 28 years, but you always learn something. And I have learned more than something this evening, and I think probably most people have as well. So just a pity we couldn't get 150 people on this Zoom call. Well, 151, as we have 151 homes in Arrowwood.
It's okay, you know, go with the concept of the coalition of the willing. Those that are willing to do, we'll work with, and hopefully the word will get out to other folks here, and then maybe they'll come, they'll see the video, and then maybe they'll come out on the 27th.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and good night, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for your patience at the